007 First Light PC specs. 007 PC specs have been revealed. This is coming just more than 4 months before the game's May 27 release. It was supposed to release on March and they delayed it to May. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed again. They also announced a collaboration with Nvidia that will allow the studio to deliver a PC experience that matches the level of quality we believe the Bond franchise deserves. That's what they said. But what they're saying here is performance, responsiveness, and visual fidelity. It all needs to feel effortless for the player, and Nvidia GeForce RTX technologies, including DLSS 4, enables us to deliver exactly that. These are the minimum and recommended specs below. They're all for 1080p, by the way. They haven't even provided an option for 1440p. Most gamers are still playing 1080p, that's fine, but I think a significant amount of gamers are playing games at 1440p, including myself. Both my monitors are 1440p, and I love playing in that spec because I think that just hits the sweet spot in terms of gaming resolution. Having 4K right next to your eyes doesn't really, it's overkill. 1440p I think gives a little bit more detail, and it just strikes the balance between 1080p and 4K. So I stick with that most of the time. So I think a lot of people, as far as I know, do play 1440p, and increasingly so. So it is weird that they haven't even provided specs for that, but this is what they have come up with. PC specs minimum just to get 1080p and 30 FPS. That's minimum. Okay. And here's recommended. Recommended settings. RAM, you need 32 gigabytes of RAM and video RAM of 12 gigabytes. Just to get 1080p 60 FPS for a game like 007 First Light, which I believe is a very narrative focused game. Yes, you have sandbox areas, but they're very small compared to an open world game. Having to have 32 gigabytes of RAM and video RAM of 12 gigabytes just to achieve 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second feels like poor optimization for me. Please tell me if it's not the case, because to me that feels like they could have done a little bit of a better job than to request to have 32 GB RAM and 12 GB video RAM just to achieve 1080p at 60 FPS in 2026 on these cards. I get those graphic cards are a little old at this point, but you would have thought that it wouldn't be as heavy. I mean, it all comes down to how optimized the games are, and I don't know. Even with what we saw, right? There were some sections that were like really crazy. Yeah, over here, like this section. If you just keep, yeah, the frame rate in this section drops so heavily, and it is quite crazy, like how intense that gets. Like it's so heavy on the graphic card, like it's dropping. Look at that. It's dropping frames so much. This to me is purely because of poor optimization. I get it, like there's a lot going on in the scene, lots of particles flying around, and you're in a moving vehicle, so there's a moving background, there's a lot of shit's going down here, but you can't see what's going on here right now. This was okay when they showed it off because it's still a game in working development, and I hope they fix that as well. But if this is right, I'm assuming this is running on high-end PC, or maybe it's running on the console. I don't know. Even if it's running on the console, clearly if this is happening, that means it's still not optimized for the console. If it's running on a PC, they wouldn't be running this on a mid PC. They will be running this on a high-end PC, and if they're still getting this kind of performance, that's questionable, right? So again, my point is it comes down to how well optimized the game is. We have seen that are games that are much bigger than these achieve smooth performance through really good optimization. So I really hope that IO Interactive actually work on it a little bit more and hopefully get it down to a point where the game scales a little better with the PC specs. I mean, I'm not comparing this to Where Winds Meet, a huge game, by the way. It's a free-to-play game though. So there are still issues with the game. I'm not saying it's perfect, but they have managed to get a game like that, even though it's free to play. You know that it's a massive game. It scales down to a mobile phone and it runs pretty well on it. I have tried it on my iPhone and it runs pretty well on my iPhone, and it's running really well on my PC. It comes down to optimization. So if you haven't done that, you're gonna have to request players to have these kind of bizarre PC specs. So I hope by the time the game actually releases that they have managed to work on it a little bit more. Those recommended specs are just that, just recommended, and the game will run quite smoothly even below that. That's my hope. So let's see. What do you think? Let me know.